Ruby had been live on TikTok for almost 20 minutes when her followers suddenly started talking about her dance. At first, she ignored the comments. People joked around during her live stream all the time. So when hundreds of viewers began typing that the frame picture behind her just moved, she laughed and told them they needed to find better ways to prank people. But the comments kept pouring in. They all said the same thing. Ruby, the woman in the picture, just turned her head. Still smiling, Ruby opened the front camera to check the wall behind her, but everything looked normal. Then one of her closest friends sent her a screen recording from the live stream. Curious, she replayed the video. She watched herself dancing and talking to her followers until her eyes drifted to the frame portrait hanging behind her. She paused the video, replayed it, paused it again. Her heart began to race. The woman inside the picture had been facing straight ahead when the live stream started. A few seconds later, the woman's head slowly turned towards her. Ruby immediately spun around. The picture was hanging exactly where it had always been. Her followers were still flooding the comments, begging her to leave the room, trying to prove that everyone was overreacting. Ruby slowly walked towards the picture. She stood so close that she could see the tiny cracks in the old wooden frame. She frowned. The woman's face was now looking straight ahead again. Ruby let out a nervous laugh. She stretched out her hand, and that was when it happened. The woman inside the picture slowly leaned forward. Then right before Ruby's eyes, her head came out of the frame. Ruby screamed so loud that the phone slipped from her hands. She turned and ran out of the bedroom, nearly crashing into the wall as she rushed downstairs to find her mother. She grabbed her by the arm and dragged her upstairs, talking so fast that her words barely made sense. But when they stepped back into the room, the picture was exactly the way it had always been. The woman was inside the frame, facing straight ahead without the slightest sign that anything had happened. Her mother looked at the picture, then at Ruby and sighed. "You let this TikTok thing get into your head," she said. "You need to rest." Ruby wanted to believe that she really did, but before you can understand why the picture moved and why it chose Ruby, you first need to understand who Ruby is. Long before people knew her as Ruby Steps, Ruby was simply a little girl who never seemed to hear music the same way everyone else did. While other children clapped to the beat, Ruby somehow knew exactly what her feet were supposed to do. Every birthday party became her stage. Every family gathering ended with someone calling her into the middle of the compound to dance. It wasn't something anyone forced her to do. Dancing simply came naturally to her. And once the music started, it was almost impossible to stop her. Her parents noticed the gift very early. Instead of asking her to slow down or treating it as a distraction from school, they encouraged it. They enrolled her in dance classes during holidays, allowed her to participate in competitions, and never complained whenever she spent hours in front of the television trying to learn new steps. As long as her schoolwork remained excellent, they saw no reason to stand in the way of something that made her genuinely happy. It didn't take long before people outside the family began noticing too. At one children's birthday party, Ruby entered the dance competition simply for fun. Somebody in the crowd recorded her performance on a phone and uploaded the video online. Nobody expected much from it. It was just a little girl dancing at a birthday party. By the following morning, the video had spread further than anyone imagined. People couldn't stop talking about the little girl whose confidence was bigger than the stage itself. Dance pages reposted the video. Entertainment blogs shared it. Strangers began asking who she was. Even after the excitement died down, one thing remained. Ruby had discovered that people loved watching her dance. That was the beginning of at Ruby Steps. As she grew older, her page grew with her. She wasn't the kind of creator who simply copied whatever trend was popular that week. Ruby enjoyed creating her own dance challenges. She would hear a new song, lock herself inside her room for hours, and refuse to come out until she had invented fresh steps that nobody had seen before. Somehow, those dances always caught on. One challenge after another went viral, and before long, millions of people were copying movements that had started in Ruby's bedroom. The more successful she became, the more fearless she became. Ruby had a habit of laughing at old superstitions. If people claimed they were dance you weren't supposed to perform at night, Ruby tried it. If they said dancing in front of a mirror brought bad luck, she recorded herself doing exactly that and joked about it with her followers. Every single time, nothing happened. The videos performed well, people laughed in the comments, and Ruby became even more convinced that most of those stories existed only to frighten people. The confidence followed her everywhere, even after she entered the university. By then, Ruby's steps had become one of the fastest growing dance pages on TikTok. Brands were beginning to notice her. Students recognized her on campus. It wasn't unusual for someone to stop her after lectures just to ask for a selfie or to go tell her they had learned one of her dance challenges. Ruby remained friendly with everyone, but deep inside, she was always thinking about one thing: what can I create next that nobody has ever seen before? One Monday morning, their lecturer walked into class carrying a stack of files and announced that the department would be going on a compulsory cultural field trip. The students immediately became excited. The trip would form part of their continuous assessment, and they would be divided into groups, with each group studying a different aspect of the community they were visiting. Some would research traditional marriage rites, others would study local festivals, food, music, and oral history. When the list was finally pinned to the notice board, Ruby found her name under one particular group: festivals and masquerades. She smiled to herself. The following morning, the university bus arrived in the village a few minutes before noon. The long journey had left almost everyone tired, but the excitement of finally reaching their destination quickly replaced the fatigue. As soon as they stepped down from the bus, several students brought out their phones to take pictures, while others stretched their aching backs after sitting for hours. Ruby did exactly what she always did whenever she found herself somewhere new. She recorded a short video smiling into the camera as she told her followers she had just arrived at one of the oldest communities in the state for a cultural research project. As usual, the comments began pouring in before she even put the phone back into her bag. The driver, who had made several trips to the village over the years, reminded them that visitors were expected to greet the traditional ruler before going anywhere else. It was a sign of respect the community took seriously. Nobody argued. The students gathered themselves and followed one of the village boys, who led them through a narrow path until they arrived at the chief's palace. The palace wasn't the grand building some of them had imagined. It was simple, spacious, and surrounded by large trees that had probably stood there long before any of them were born. A few elderly men sat quietly outside, discussing village matters, while several women moved in and out of the compound, carrying trays of food and calabashes. It was obvious that something was happening in the village that day. After introducing themselves and explaining the purpose of their visit, the chief welcomed them warmly. He was pleased that young people were still interested in learning about traditions that many had abandoned for modern life. As he spoke, the distant sounds of drums drifted into the palace courtyard. The chief smiled. "You people came on a good day," he said. "There's a small community celebration this afternoon. You get to see some of the things you came here to study instead of only hearing about them." He immediately asked one of the village elders, Pa Nana, to take charge of Ruby's group. According to the chief, there was hardly anything about the village festivals, masquerades, and traditional dances that the old man didn't know. Pa Nana greeted the students warmly before leading them away from the palace at an unhurried pace. As they walked through the village, he answered every question with remarkable patience. Whenever someone asked about a shrine, he simply explained its history. Whenever they pointed at an old masquerade costume displayed inside a small cultural hut, he explained which festival it belonged to and why it was worn. The students filled pages of their notebook while occasionally stopping to take photographs of carvings, drums, and ancient costumes that had been preserved for generations. Ruby listened carefully like everyone else, but she always found herself paying closer attention whenever the conversation turned to dancing. Every masquerade, according to Nana, had its own rhythm. Every festival had movements that meant something to the people performing them. To most of the students, they were simply facts for an assignment. To Ruby, There were ideas. Not long afterwards, the sound of the drums grew louder. More villagers began walking in the same direction, some carrying wooden stools, while children ran excitedly ahead of their parents. But Nana smiled and told the students to follow him if they wanted to witness the celebration before it ended. By the time they reached the village square, people had already formed a wide circle around an open space in the middle. The drummers sat beneath a large canopy while several elderly women clapped gently to the rhythm. It wasn't a grand festival. It was one of those community gatherings where people seemed to know everyone else. After a few cultural displays, a group of young dancers stepped into the open space. They couldn't have been much older than secondary school students, yet the confidence with which they danced immediately drew everyone's attention. One after another, they performed traditional steps they had obviously learned from childhood, and every time one of them finished, the crowd responded with loud applause. Ruby smiled. She enjoyed watching them, but as she could already tell, those weren't the dances that made this village famous. Then the atmosphere changed. The drums slowed. Even the children who had been running around moments earlier suddenly became quiet. From one side of the square, a masked performer stepped forward. His movements were unlike anything Ruby had seen since arriving in the village. Every step was deliberate. Every turn matched the rhythm of the drum so perfectly that it almost looked unreal. There was no unnecessary movement. It was as though the dance itself was telling a story. Ruby couldn't take her eyes off him. She wasn't watching for entertainment anymore. She was studying every movement, every turn, every shift of the feet. When the performance finally came to an end, she quietly reached into her bag and brought out her phone. She had barely unlocked the screen when Nana gently placed his hand over it. He wasn't angry. He simply looked at Ruby and spoke calmly. "That dance isn't like the others you've seen today." Ruby looked at him without saying a word. Nana explained that the dance was never performed for entertainment. It belonged to an ancient ceremony carried out before certain masquerade festivals, and only those choosing for that responsibility were permitted to perform it. According to him, every movement in the dance was an invitation, and traditions like that were never meant to be copied, altered, or performed outside the ceremony itself. Ruby nodded politely as though she understood. Then she slipped the phone back into her bag. The rest of the afternoon passed peacefully, and by evening, the students were already on their way back home. The journey home was quiet. Most of her classmates slept. Ruby didn't. She spent almost the entire trip replaying the dance in her mind, breaking it into pieces, changing a few movements here and there, and imagining how she could turn it into something fresh. By the time she got back to her apartment that night, she was exhausted. She should have taken a shower, eaten dinner, and gone to bed. Instead, she pushed the furniture aside, placed her phone in front of the mirror, adjusted the camera angle, and began dancing. By the time she finished, the ancient ceremonial dance had become something completely different. It had become a Ruby Steps challenge. She uploaded the video, smiled at the caption one last time, switched off the lights, and went to bed, completely satisfied with what she had created. By the following evening, the Ruby Steps challenge had become the biggest thing on TikTok. Everywhere Ruby looked, someone was dancing to it. School children recorded themselves during break time. University students gathered inside hostels to learn the steps. Even a few celebrities had joined the challenge, each adding their own style while still keeping the original movement Ruby had created. Her follower count increased so quickly that she stopped checking it every few seconds and minutes. She had experienced viral moments before, but nothing compared to this. As far as Ruby was concerned, she had created the biggest dance challenge of her career. To celebrate the milestone, she announced that she'll be going live that evening. The comments immediately filled with excitement. Some people wanted to break the dance down step by step. Others simply wanted to congratulate her. By the time the countdown ended, thousands of people were already waiting for the live stream to begin. Ruby spent a few minutes arranging her room before pressing the go live button. She adjusted the ring light, placed her phone on the stand, and quickly looked around to make sure everything was neat. The framed portrait hanging on the wall behind her remained exactly where it had always been. It had been there for many years, that she had hardly paid any attention to it anymore. Satisfied with the camera angle, she smiled, took a deep breath, and started the live stream. Within seconds, the viewers began pouring in. She laughed as she watched the number climbed. The comments moved so quickly that she could barely read them. People congratulated her for creating another successful challenge. Others begged her not to stop making dance videos because they had already started looking forward to whenever she would create next. Ruby thanked them one after another, occasionally laughing whenever she came across a funny comment. The live stream continued that way for almost 20 minutes and everything felt perfectly normal. Then the comments suddenly changed. At first, it was only a few people typing the same thing. "Ruby, look behind you." She smiled and ignored it. Comments like that appeared on live streams all the time, and she assumed her followers were trying to play another harmless prank. She continued answering questions, but instead of stopping, more people began saying exactly the same thing. Within a few seconds, almost every new comment mentioned the picture hanging behind her. Some asked who the woman in the frame was looking at. Others begged her not to turn around. A few insisted they had just seen the picture move. Ruby laughed and shook her head. "You people won't catch me with this one," she said, still smiling at the camera. "Find another joke." Her phone suddenly rang. It was her closest friend. Without thinking, she rejected the call and continued talking to her followers. Less than 10 seconds later, the phone rang again. This time, she frowned slightly before rejecting it once more. Almost immediately, a notification appeared on her screen. Her friend had sent a screen recording from the live stream with only one short message: "Watch it now." Ruby hesitated for a moment before opening the video. She expected to find another edited clip created to scare her, but as the recording played, the smile on her face slowly disappeared. At first, everything looked exactly the way she remembered it. She was laughing, reading comments and thanking her followers for supporting the challenge. Then her attention shifted to the framed portrait hanging on the wall behind her. She immediately dragged the video back to the beginning and watched it again, this time paying no attention to herself. Her eyes remained fixed on the picture. She watched it and then saw it. The woman inside the portrait slowly turned her head. Ruby immediately looked over her shoulder. The portrait was still hanging on the wall. The woman inside it was facing straight ahead, exactly the way she always had. Ruby stared at it for several seconds before quietly getting up from her chair. She wasn't frightened yet. She honestly believed someone had edited the recording before sending it to her. Holding the phone in one hand, she slowly walked towards the wall until she was standing directly in front of the picture. The room became unusually quiet. Even the comments racing across her screen no longer mattered. She couldn't stop looking at the woman's face. Something didn't feel right. Ruby had lived in that room for years. She had walked past that picture countless times. She knew exactly how it looked. She knew the angle of the woman's face. She knew the direction of her eyes. She leaned towards, studying it more carefully, trying to convince herself that she was only imagining things. Then it happened. Without the slightest warning, the woman's head slowly pushed forward through the frame, as though the picture was no longer a picture, but an open doorway. Inch by inch, her face emerged from the portrait until it was hanging outside the frame, staring directly at Ruby. For one brief moment, Ruby couldn't even scream. Her entire body froze where she stood. Then the scream finally escaped. The phone slipped from her hand and crashed onto the floor, but the live stream continued broadcasting as thousands of verified viewers watched Ruby stumble backwards before turning and running out of the room, screaming for her mother at the top of her voice. Ruby's scream brought her mother upstairs immediately. By the time she pushed the bedroom door open, Ruby was already pressed against the corridor wall, shaking uncontrollably and pointing towards the room, tears streaming down her face as she struggled to explain what she had just seen. Her mother looked around the bedroom, then walked slowly to the framed portrait hanging on the wall. It looked exactly the way it always had. The woman inside the picture was facing forward, her expression unchanged, and apart from Ruby's phone lying on the floor with the live stream still running, nothing else seemed out of place. Her mother picked up the phone and ended the live stream before leading Ruby downstairs. She assumed the pressure from social media, the endless content creation, and the excitement surrounding the viral challenge had finally caught up with her daughter. Ruby kept insisting that the woman had come out of the picture, but the more she repeated it, the more her mother believed exhaustion had begun affecting her mind. That night, Ruby couldn't sleep. Each time she closed her eyes, she heard the same slow rhythm of drums she had heard in the village. she would suddenly sit upright, convinced someone was dancing somewhere inside the house. Several times she rushed out of her bedroom to check every corner of the sitting room, only to find nothing. By morning, she had developed a high fever. Her breathing became difficult, her body felt unusually weak, and she complained of a sharp pain that moved from her chest to her back. Alarmed by how quickly her condition changed, her parents rushed her to the hospital. The doctors carried out one test after another, blood tests, scans, observations. Hours passed, but every result came back normal. Medically, nothing was wrong with Ruby, yet anyone who looked at her could tell she was suffering. She cried whenever the sound of drums echoed in her ears. Sometimes she stared towards empty corners of the hospital ward, as though she could see someone standing there. At one point, she suddenly covered her ears and screamed for the nurses to stop the dancing, even though everyone else in the room could hear nothing. Her father gently held her hand and asked the question that changed everything. What happened? For several seconds, she remained silent. Then she broke down completely. Between tears, she told them about the university field trip. She told them about the village, about the celebration, the special dance, the warning Nana had given her, and how she ignored it because she believed it was just another superstition. Finally, she admitted she had gone home that same night, recreated the dance in front of the mirror, modified it, and uploaded it as the Ruby Steps challenge. The room felt silent. Her parents looked at each other without saying a word. The following morning, they drove back to the same village. Finding Nana didn't take long. The elderly man recognized Ruby immediately. One look at her pale face told him she wasn't there for another assignment. He listened quietly as her father explained everything that happened from the day she uploaded the dance until the terrifying live stream. When the old man finally spoke, his voice remained calm. He explained that the dance Ruby copied was never meant to entertain people. It was performed only during a sacred ceremony that marked the beginning of a certain masquerade festivals. According to the traditions of the village, it was an invitation performed by those who had been entrusted with that responsibility alone. It was never to be copied, altered, or performed casually, especially not before a mirror or under artificial light. By changing the movements and sending them across the internet, Ruby had unknowingly taken something sacred out of the place where it belonged. Ruby lowered her head. For the first time since the whole ordeal began, she wasn't thinking about followers. She wasn't thinking about views. She was only thinking about going on her life. Nana told her there was only one thing she could do. The dance had to disappear. Every copy she'd made had to be removed. Every video she owned had to be deleted, and her account had to be deleted. Ruby hesitated. 3 million followers, years of hard work, partnership, memories. Everything she had built was tied to the account. She quietly admitted that she didn't think she could delete it. Before anyone else could speak, her mother stretched out her hand. Ruby looked at her for a few seconds before slowly placing the phone in her mother's palm. Without saying a word, her mother opened the account, deleted the original video, removed every backup Ruby still had, and then permanently deleted the entire account. Ruby watched the screen go blank. She cried, not because of the followers, not because of the fame, but because she knew she was watching years of hard work disappear in a matter of minutes. Her mother gently held her shoulders. "My daughter," she said, "followers can come back. Your life cannot." Those words stayed with Ruby. Using another account, she recorded one final message, begging everyone who had participated in the challenge to delete their videos immediately. At first, many people didn't understand why she sounded so desperate, but as more creators began admitting they had experienced the same strange event before performing the dance, the warning spread just as quickly as the challenge itself. One after another, people removed the videos from their pages until little by little, the challenge disappeared. A few days later, Ruby slept peacefully for the first time since the live stream ended. The drums stopped, the dancing figures disappeared. The pictures never moved again. Months later, she created a brand new TikTok account and slowly returned to making dance videos. This time, however, she became far more careful about the content she shared. Whenever she visited a new place or learned something that people regarded as sacred, she respected it exactly the way she found it. Some lessons cost money, some cost pride, and some almost cost a life. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notification so you don't miss our next African story. Until next time, thank you for watching.